Well, what is going on YouTube? Welcome back to A Therapeutic Edge. Now, today on the table in front of us is the new Zero Tolerance 0308, or just 308. This is a continuation of their 300 line. This is one hell of a knife. I really like it. Except, and let me clarify, there's nothing wrong with this knife. In fact, I really do enjoy it. It is well made. It is good materials. It is fun to carry. It is easy to use. It's a good knife. But because it's the 300 series, it's supposed to be the follow-up to this. Now, this is the ZT-0303, which is the follow-up to the 0300. Now, these knives are my favorite knives sort of in the world. I'm not kidding. You guys know I have a ton of knives. This, even in the face of my Striders and my Hinderers, all of that, this remains my favorite hard-use knife. When Ken Onion and a little bit of Strider got involved to make this thing, when he designed this knife, he designed it with hard use and service in mind, and it shows. It's assisted. It's S30V steel, which is really good at holding an edge and really good at being rust resistant. It is a marvelous combination of materials. It is titanium and G10 running on phosphor bronze washers. Because it is on phosphor bronze washers and assisted, and by the way, the assisted spring in here is essentially a car part. It is never going to break. This thing will deploy and work in the worst possible conditions. It is comfortable. Now, a lot of people don't like the recurve. I have no problem with it because I don't ever let it get dull enough to be a problem, and if I do, I have the tools to sharpen a recurve. This is a spectacular knife. So, when they decided to follow it up, they made some changes. And those changes are, I think, where kind of the conversation and maybe a little of the issue comes about. You see, this is on bearings. And that makes a ton of difference, particularly when they're going to put a hole in it like that, right at the bearing point. So if you get this thing down in the mud and the muck, you're asking for stuff to get into the bearings, and that, well, there's two arguments here. One, with this space here, you can rinse this out very easily and clear the stuff that has climbed into the bearings from use. That does make sense. So it's kind of a trade-off. Are you, when you're holding it like this, you are kind of keeping that area closed, so the likelihood of material getting into the bearings is limited, but it is going to happen. And that's a weird choice to make on a knife that is supposed to follow up that. Now, having said that, I'm going to put this away and focus on this because the 0308 is an excellent knife for what it is. It is a huge chunk of CPM 20CV steel running on bearings. It is G10. It is titanium. Now, I've dropped a deep carry clip on this because that's what I do with knives that I'm going to keep. But it is really good materials. It is very comfortable. It is well sorted and well thought out. The fit and finish is very, very good. And it should be, because this is a $300 knife. But to be fair, so are these. That's a lot of money. And I recognize that, and that is going to turn a lot of people off. I know that knives cost a lot of money now. I know that for this much of these materials, you're going to pay a fair price. I don't think 300 is completely outrageous. I do think that they would have been happier, or made us out here in the world happier, if they'd have put it at 290. I know that's no real difference, but just keeping it below that 300 mark would have made an emotional difference that probably would have made a huge difference to the knife buying world. But things are what they are. So what do you get for your 300 bucks? Well, I've mentioned some of it. You get a really beautiful CPM 20 CV blade. I love this swedge, and the overall blade shape on this thing is really so good. You get a very comfortable, big handle that is designed to be held and used without question. You get some jimping. You get a big, thick pivot. Now, this pivot looks fancy, But really, on this side, this thing is shaped. It's flattened on here and on here and here. This is designed actually to be used with a 1/2-inch wrench, either a socket or anything. So it's just a 1/2-inch wrench. It looks fancy, but it isn't, which is a really nice feature. You get a hardened steel lock bar insert. Again, it is running on bearings. This is a really competitive knife in the high-end materials, fancy knife market. I just, again, wish they hadn't tried to make it a successor to this, because it's a completely different knife than that. Really, that is my issue. If they'd have called this the 0600 and started a whole new line, I never would have blinked. So again, I'm going to focus on what it is, not what it isn't. Since I've had this, it has spent a ton of time in my pocket. Enough that I dropped the deep carry clip on it that I happen to have available to me. I know that I'm going to carry this thing. Now, this is Desert Tan. They say they're going to release this in green and in black and other colors. You guys know me. This Desert Tan is not long for this world. It is going to take a bath in some RIT dye here pretty quick, and I'm going to have the first black one, as far as I know. But I wanted to do the review with it mostly stock before I did that kind of a change. The blade shape, which I mentioned a second ago, is really tall. So it comes to a very, very sharp, nice edge. The grind is perfect on both sides. It is the same size. It is straight and clean. The edge is very, very nice. It has no smile because it has this little bit of a sharpening choil right here. The flipper tab on this thing is tiny. I mean, look at its great-grandfather here, right? And when I first saw this, I thought, oh man, that is going to be hard to deploy, but they have just nailed the detent on this knife. You cannot, shake it out, and every time you hit this flipper here, it snaps to life. It almost feels assisted, but it isn't. It's just that good. The detent on the 308 is astonishing. Do I wish they'd have done it without the speed hole here, without this vent, and maybe on phosphor bronze washers to make it a little more like its great-grandfather? Yeah, of course. But in today's modern knife market, this is exceptionally competitive, and it is, if not hard use, very overbuilt and very tough, and very much leaning back into ZT's roots, and that makes me very, very happy. Let's do some size comparisons, and then we'll get some specs out of the way. As I said, this is a big knife. It is a big boy. Well, let's put it up against a small knife first. Here it is up against our old friend, the Bug Out from Benchmade. Yeah, it's much bigger. You know, look, this is a great pocket knife. Very light, very easy to use, lots of good features. But you're not going to buy this instead of this. They're just completely different. Here it is against the Ritter Hogue, which is a perfect analog, of course, to the full-size Benchmade Griptilian. And as you can see, the 308 is considerably bigger than that. If we line the blades up, there's more than an inch more of the 308. Here it is against a budget beast. This is the Rat Model 1. And if we line these blades up, these are very similar in overall length. But of course, you get a lot more blade on the ZT and a much better steel. I do have one knife. Let's say you're looking at this and you're thinking, man, I really like that. Well, I wouldn't blame you. I think it's very, very cool. Let's say you're looking for a harder use knife that's very tough, but you don't, excuse my arm, want to spend $400 on, say, a Hinderer. You can spend a couple of $100, and get yourself the Cold Steel 8010. These knives are very similar. And in fact, this one on phosphor bronze with the Triad lock and this marvelous S35VN blade is actually more in line in design with the old ZTs. In fact, you even get about the same amount of cutting edge here. About $200, not a bad option. A knife I recommend all the time. Now, this is a little fatter. It's not going to ride the pocket as well. But depending on your needs, just know that this is out there and it is available. How much CPM 20CV do you get? Well, let's find out together, shall we? Oops, we'll go ahead and put this over on millimeters. You get 3.97 millimeters. Oh, that's hard to see. There we go. Why is that? Oh, it's because I'm turning it. What? There we go. Excuse me, 3.98 millimeters of blade stock, which is nice but not enormous. The handle itself at the thickest point is 0.6 of an inch, just over half an inch. The action on this thing is very, very good. I want to be clear. This has been an absolute joy to carry and use. Let's get the weight knocked out of the way, shall we? All right, scale, do your thing. You guys see that? Let me move it up a little bit. There we go. It weighs in at 7.1 ounces. Now, that is a hefty knife, but it is very big with thick chunks of G10 and titanium. The liner itself adds a little weight to that. There is a little bit of weight reduction on the inside. They've tried, but still, it is a heavy knife. But its grandfather is 1 full ounce heavier. It is a little thicker, as you can see, but they've come down in weight a little bit. And when you add in the fact that you are getting a considerably better blade steel here, well, it's not a super hard use in the same vein that the old 300s are, but it is a monster knife, and I love it. Despite the fact that it doesn't quite fill the same shoes as the knife in the series that it's designed into. Maybe if they'd have called it, like I said, the 0600 and started a whole new knife family, I don't know. But I do know this. If you're on the fence about this, get one. If $300 is not out of your price range, if you want a really well-made, excellent American-made knife from ZT, get one. You won't regret it. If it's too much, well, then don't. Get yourself the Cold Steel 8010 or any number of other knives and enjoy those. But again, if this interests you and $300 is not completely outrageous, grab one. I think you'll really enjoy it. I know I do. That's about it for now. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to like the video on the way out. It does help quite a bit. Please subscribe. I'd love to have you here on a regular basis. This has been the ZT 0308. I have been a Therapeutic Edge, and we'll see you next time.